Welcome to The Explainer. You know, for years, we've all seen those headlines about a crisis in the humanities. Well, today, we're going to dive into the real mystery behind them. We're going to look past all that surface-level debate and uncover a much deeper, way more fascinating story about the modern university itself.
So, you've probably heard about the canon wars, right? These superheated arguments over which books we should be teaching. Shakespeare or Toni Morrison, the classics or contemporary voices. But here's the thing. Scholar John Guillory argues this whole fight isn't really about the books at all. Nope, it's about the very institution where those books are being taught. All right, so to solve this mystery, we first need to check out the scene of the crime, so to speak, the modern university, and what a lot of people see as its big identity crisis.
See, according to Guillory, these public battles we see, about expanding the literary canon, they're really just a symptom. He calls them fever dreams. They seem super dramatic and all-consuming on the outside, but they're really just signs of an internal sickness. They show us just how vulnerable literary education has become in today's world.
Okay, so let's get into the core of the conflict. Guillory says it's basically a clash between two completely different ideas of what it even means to be an academic. A clash between two different kinds of freedom.
And this slide just captures that tension perfectly. I mean, look at this. On one side, you have pedagogic autonomy. That's the classic ideal, right? The free-thinking, charismatic teacher in the classroom. But then on the other side, you've got the cold, hard reality of being an employee in a massive organization, a kind of civil servant with a long list of administrative duties.
And this pressure to be productive, to publish papers, get grants, run departments, it completely changes the game. It forces the academic career to look a lot more like a corporate career path. So the focus subtly shifts away from this pure pursuit of knowledge and moves toward, meeting administrative goals and climbing that institutional ladder.
So what did academics do in response? Well, Guillory argues they developed this really powerful ideology of professionalism. And this wasn't just about, being professional in the normal sense. It was way more aggressive. It was a way to build a wall around their intellectual space to protect it from all these demands from the bureaucracy. And this intense focus on professionalism, it actually created something new. A powerful and kind of paradoxical figure on campus, the master theorist.
Yeah, the master theorist, or the academic superstar. You know who I'm talking about. This is the professor whose personal brand and charisma are so big, they become a huge asset for the university itself. They look like the ultimate free spirit, a total individual who's above all the boring day-to-day stuff of the institution. But, and here's the twist, this superstar's freedom, their ability to hop between prestigious universities, it's not really what it looks like. When you look closer, their career path starts to look less like intellectual liberty and a whole lot more like the career path of a corporate executive, just moving from one big job to the next.
So here's the really crucial point. This whole superstar system, it's not a rebellion against the bureaucracy. It's actually perfectly in line with the logic of the market. The same invisible hand that makes someone a celebrity is the very same one that decides the value and the next move of the academic superstar.
And this brings us to what might be the most surprising part of Guillory's entire analysis: how literary theory itself, the actual language of critique, started to unconsciously copy the very system it thought it was fighting against.
Okay, think of it like this. As the university got more and more bureaucratic, literary critics needed a way to prove their work was just as rigorous as the hard sciences. So, super complex theory, like deconstruction, where you take apart texts to find hidden meanings, it became the ultimate power move. It was this specialized technical language that put the critic back on top, reestablishing their authority.
Now, Guillory uses this table to show us what's really going on under the hood. He's arguing that the debates inside literary theory, using all those terms on the left, are actually just shadowboxing with the real-world pressures you see on the right. So, when theorists are arguing about, say, pathos versus rigor, what they're also fighting indirectly is the battle between a professor's personal charisma and the boring old bureaucratic routine of the university.
And this quote from the theorist Paul Demond just illustrates the paradox perfectly. He says, these readings can be boring, monotonous, predictable, but they are irrefutable. Think about that. The goal of this supposedly charismatic theory wasn't to be beautiful or inspiring. The goal was to be irrefutable. And those core values, technical correctness, predictability, even monotony, man, that sounds an awful lot like the values of office work, doesn't it? The theory literally became a machine.
Exactly. The intellectual sexiness of that master theorist got transferred onto the method itself. The very rigor of the process, the fact that you could repeat it over and over, became a kind of routinized labor. It was an unconscious imitation of the bureaucratic world that the theorists thought they were critiquing.
Okay, so if the superstar academic is really just a product of the market and literary theory itself became a kind of machine, Guillory argues we're left with a much more fundamental question about this whole enterprise.
At the very heart of the problem is this huge seismic shift. The university is just no longer seen as being primarily responsible for instilling universal humanist values in a cultural elite. That job, it's pretty much gone.
So what's its new mission? Well, today, its central role, at least as society sees it, is to provide the specialized knowledge and technical training needed for the modern workforce. You could almost say it's a factory for producing a class of technical and managerial specialists.
And you can see this whole historical shift laid out right here. Step 1, the old rationale. The idea was that literature gives you universal humanistic values. Then, step 2, the new reality hits. The university's main job shifts over to technical training. And the result? Step 3, the literary curriculum loses its central social function. It just becomes one specialization among many, with no clear reason why it should matter to everyone.
And that brings us right back to where we started. This is why the canon wars feel so desperate and so anxious. They're a proxy battle. When you've lost that shared sense of purpose, of course you're going to fight tooth and nail over the syllabus, because it's pretty much the only territory you have left.
So Guillory's work doesn't really hand us an easy answer. Instead, it leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. The real task facing the humanities today isn't just about shuffling the reading list around. No, it's about fundamentally rethinking and then being able to articulate a brand new, compelling reason for why we study literature at all in this new world we're living in.